Hello, I'm Dr. Warren Lee. I'm a pediatric endocrinologist and I work at my own clinic, Dr. Warren Lee's Pediatrics Growth and Diabetes Center. I think you should be concerned if your child was born small, okay? In other words, small for gestational age or smaller than the obstetrician would have liked the child to be. If your child was born premature, because often when they're premature, they're also born a little bit smaller than they should be. If they were growing poorly from birth, or if they actually were growing well up to a certain point and then they started slowing down. So sometimes when they start slowing down, they would have been actually at a good size and a good weight. And when they slow down, they might still be within normal for the population, but much less than what they should be for themselves. You should also be concerned if, let's say, mom and dad are tall and the child's only average. We would be concerned if the child is more than 2 standard deviations below the parents, for example. The other thing is that we should be concerned if the child seems to be growing too fast. For example, if the child was born small, suddenly seems to be catching up. It's sometimes that the child is going into early puberty or premature puberty, or we call it precocious puberty, because this is actually often a consequence of a child who was born small, then who put on a lot of weight initially after birth, tends to bring forward the age of puberty in an abnormal way. The growth of a child requires sufficient hormones, like growth hormone, thyroid hormone, and sex hormone at the appropriate times to drive growth. A happy child actually grows better. Okay, so emotional problems, anxieties actually may affect growth adversely. A child also may have growth which is adversely affected by chronic illness. So for example, severe asthma that was not well controlled, that would affect growth. A blocked nose that is blocked every night, that affects growth hormone secretion. People who snore every night. The poor sleepers don't grow so well. The poor eaters sometimes don't grow so well either. And people with other chronic illnesses such as gluten intolerance or celiac disease, it does happen in Asians, will also not grow as well as they should. Puberty is important when we are monitoring a child's growth because puberty is actually the last stage of growth. You can't grow anymore after your bones have fused. When puberty starts, that is when arguably the fusion of bones actually starts as well. If a child is short when puberty starts, the final height is actually very much dependent on the height when you start puberty. So if you started puberty when you're short, it doesn't matter whether you started early or you started late, your final height would still be limited. The signs of puberty that we're looking for would be underarm odor, adult smell, breast development, and actually sometimes for the fat kids it's a bit hard, but you might actually feel that some breast tissue underneath the mound of fat. For boys, it's when the penis enlarges, the testicles enlarge. For both sexes is when you start to see armpit hair or hair in the private parts. Actually, more importantly as well, when you see a sudden change in the growth rate. So as I said, if a child was born small and somewhere between say primary 1 to primary 2, primary 3, you suddenly start to see a growth spurt, that might be the start of puberty. We know that actually traditionally puberty would have started around about 10, 11, 12, but we're nowadays starting to see children whose puberty starts at about 7, 8 or 9 years old. If these people start their puberty too early, they will also finish growing very early. So I often see children who have almost finished their growth by the time they're about 14, 15 years old in Sec 2, Sec 3. And the parents come to see me and say that, well, can you please help my child because the growth seems to have slowed down. When you talk to them, you say, well, actually this child had his or her growth spurt in late primary school. And we know that actually you stop growing about 2 to 3 years after your first menstrual period, or you stop growing about 2 to 3 years after your voice breaks if you're a boy. If you have a child who's a bit short and they've just had their voice break or they've just had their first period, don't wait. Please go and see someone who is specialized in this area. We can treat you. There is treatment available. It is very effective. I hope I've been able to answer some of the burning questions which I find that my patients are often asking me about what to look out for in terms of growth and development in their children. If you've got questions about your own child, it may be useful to seek a second opinion, because this is a rapidly changing field. Many of the developments in this field have been quite recent. Not all doctors are aware of what nowadays can be done for children with a growth problem.